They were tiny, frightened, huddled beneath the smoking wreckage of their nest. And when the soldiers raised their rifles, the humans stepped between them and the cubs. Marcus Chin hadn't come to Kepler for 42B to be a hero. He'd come to fix communication relays, drink terrible station coffee, and send money home to his daughter on Earth. But sometimes life doesn't ask permission before it changes you forever. The Vrex cubs, 3 of them no bigger than house cats, trembled against each other, their iridescent fur matted with ash. Their parents lay motionless nearby, victims of the mercenary raid that had torn through the settlement. The cub's 6 eyes, wide with terror, locked onto Marcus as he approached. "Easy, little ones," he whispered, kneeling slowly. His translator struggled with the Vrex language, but fear needed no translation. The lead mercenary, a Corvid named Drex, laughed. "Step aside, human. The Vrex colony owes us payment. These cubs will fetch a good price in the slave markets." Marcus didn't move. Instead, he remembered Sarah, his own daughter, barely older than these cubs in human years. He remembered the promise he'd made at her bedside the night before he left Earth, to make the galaxy a better place for her. "I don't care what species they are, kids don't die on my watch," Marcus said, his voice steady as steel. The mercenaries exchanged amused glances. 12 of them, armed with plasma rifles. 1 human maintenance worker with a wrench and a bad habit of caring too much. "This isn't your fight, human," Drex warned. "Your kind preaches neutrality. Non-interference. Walk away." Marcus stood slowly, positioning himself fully between the cubs and the guns. Behind him, one of the cubs whimpered, a sound so universal it could have come from any frightened child anywhere in the galaxy. "You're right," Marcus said. "It's not my fight. But you know what? Some wars are fought for power. This one's for something bigger." What happened next would be broadcast across every major news feed in 3 star systems. Security footage from the destroyed settlement would be analyzed, shared, and whispered about in 100 different languages. Because what the galaxy witnessed wasn't just a fight, it was a revelation. Drex fired first. Marcus moved faster than any human should have, adrenaline turning him into something primal. He grabbed a piece of debris, a metal beam from the destroyed nest, and swung it like humanity's ancestors once swung clubs. The plasma bolt went wide. "You call it weakness. We call it heart. And you just made the mistake of breaking one," Marcus growled, advancing on the startled mercenaries. The fight shouldn't have lasted 30 seconds. Marcus wasn't enhanced, wasn't military, wasn't special. But he was something the mercenaries had never encountered, a parent defending children. Not his children by species, but his by choice. He fought with the fury of every human who'd ever stood between danger and innocence. Dirty, desperate, and utterly committed. When they shot him in the shoulder, he kept coming. When they broke his ribs, he laughed and spat blood. "Is he insane?" One mercenary gasped as Marcus, bleeding from a dozen wounds, still stood between them and the cubs. "No," said another, backing away. "He's human." The turning point came when Marcus, barely standing, looked back at the cubs. The smallest one had crept forward, pressing against his leg. Trusting him. That trust turned his pain into power. "You want them." Marcus roared, his voice echoing across the burning settlement. "Then you go through me. And I promise you, you'll remember this day as the worst decision of your lives." Something in his eyes, maybe the absolute certainty that he would die before letting them pass, made the mercenaries hesitate. And in that hesitation, salvation arrived. Vrex security forces, alerted by the one functioning relay Marcus had repaired that morning, surrounded the square. But they didn't fire. Nobody did. Everyone was watching the bloodied human maintenance worker standing guard over 3 alien cubs like they were the most precious things in the universe. "Stand down," the Vrex commander ordered the mercenaries. Then, softer, to Marcus, "You can rest now, human. We have them." Marcus didn't move. Couldn't really. The adrenaline was fading, and with it, his strength. "The cubs, they're safe?" "Safe," the commander confirmed. "Thanks to you." Only then did Marcus allow himself to collapse. The smallest cub stayed pressed against him, purring, a sound of comfort that transcended species. Later, in the medical bay, Marcus woke to find himself surrounded by Vrex officials, human diplomats, and reporters from a dozen worlds. But he only had eyes for the 3 cubs peeking around the doorway. "Hey, troublemakers," he smiled weakly. "You okay?" They chittered and bounded to his bedside, careful of his bandages. The smallest one, the one who'd stood with him, climbed onto the bed and curled against his side. "The galaxy is watching," a human diplomat said quietly. "Every network, every feed. They're calling you the Guardian of Kepler. The mercenaries are in custody, and the Vrex government wants to give you their highest honor." Marcus shook his head. I don't need honors. He looked at the cubs, safe and alive. I have a daughter back home. If something happened to her, I'd want someone to stand up. Anyone. That's all this was. But the Vrex commander understood better. That day, we didn't see a human. We saw a force the galaxy had forgotten, righteous fury. You reminded us that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the odds. The story spread like wildfire. A human with no stake in the conflict, no obligation to help, had nearly died protecting alien young. Not for money. Not for glory. Simply because it was right. On 100 worlds, military academies would study the incident. How one unarmed human had held off 12 mercenaries through sheer determination. But on 1,000 more worlds, parents would tell a different story about the day a human showed the galaxy that protecting the innocent wasn't about species or politics or probability. It was about heart. Marcus returned to Earth 6 months later, medically discharged but walking. Sarah met him at the spaceport, throwing herself into his arms. Dad, you're famous. My teacher says you're a hero. Marcus hugged her tight, remembering 3 other youngsters who'd needed a hero. No, sweetheart. I'm just a dad who learned that every child deserves someone willing to stand up for them. Even alien kids? Especially alien kids. They don't have enough people looking out for them yet. That night, as Marcus tucked Sarah into bed, she asked, would you do it again? He thought of the cubs, now safe with adopted families. Of the smallest one who'd stood with him when standing seemed impossible. Of the message he'd received that morning, a video of them playing, growing, living the lives he'd nearly died to protect. Every time, sweetheart. Every single time. Across the galaxy, in languages humanity couldn't pronounce, Marcus Chen's name became synonymous with a simple truth. He didn't just protect them. He became the reason they lived to grow up. And somewhere on Kepler 442b, 3 Vrex cubs grew strong and safe, knowing that when the universe had turned dark, a human, not bound by blood or duty, had chosen to be their light. That's the thing about humans. When the galaxy witnessed true fury that day, it wasn't the rage of war. It was the fury of love. And nothing in the universe stands against that for long.